It's September update time and also catching up on the things that happened over the summer because, I need a vacation too every now and again. We've got new releases from a ton of brands. The industry is still having a really difficult 2025, and the US hit Switzerland with a 39% tariff. Let's dive in. For those of you that don't know, Anordain is a Glaswegian brand that have mainly gotten acclaim for their enamel dials. They don't do a lot of social media. They have a loyal following, and for the most part, they are perpetually sold out. This time around, they've launched their first porcelain dials. Porcelain takes a base dial of clay and fires it at a very high temperature. For some finishes, a vitreous glaze can be applied to the dial and fired to bond with that porcelain dial. This is a fairly classic technique that you'll know from plates and serving dishes. The key here is the manual nature of the process, just like enameling is a manual process. This isn't some mass-produced sunray dial, but rather a more bespoke kind of dial. The good thing for Anordain about porcelain is that you can make more dials at a time. Enamel is super finicky, it has a high reject rate, and it's just plain slow going. Porcelain gets you a really beautiful dial with some of that specialness that we attribute to enamel, but with more volume. This is designed to cater to a slightly more volume audience. Not that they're going to be making 20,000 of these, but it's still going to be unique because porcelain, although usually glossy in this take, is going to have imperfections that make each dial its own. This watch is 39.5 millimeters. The dial is a gloss black. The markers are gold rimmed with superluminova fill. The seconds hand is red with a white pointer. The outer track is the 60 seconds counter. The case is a simple brushed affair. Inside you've got a Lejeune Pareil movement, and depending on the configuration chosen, you'll be paying around $2,500. The watch itself is the Model 2, which I think is best compared to something like a Hamilton Murph. It's not quite a dress watch, and it's also not quite a field watch. It bridges kind of both spaces really, really well. Who's it for? Well, initially it's for the previous owners of Anordain watches and current build slot holders. There's still a lead time, but once it's more broadly released, it's for the micro brand lover who wants something different in a dressed down style. This is a very specific kind of proposition for a very specific kind of buyer. A Hamilton Murph will set you back about 1/3 of this watch, and on paper it's got a more spec'd out Powermatic movement with more power reserve. For $2,500, you're paying more than you would for a base Nomos Club Campus in 38 millimeters. It's less than a Club Sport, but to a lot of people, that's just going to feel a little bit expensive. Unless, of course, you appreciate a handmade porcelain dial. That's where the cost goes. One person, Clara, I think her name is making these dials. And that's what you pay for. This is one of those watches like an Atelier Wen Perception that has a guilloche dial. It's one of those craft details that you don't see often at this price point. And to some people, that's worth the entire extra cost. To others, it's not going to be. Also, I appreciate the willingness to deliver that bit of craft that we usually have to pay so much for. That's also super cool. As for dislikes, I've always preferred the Model 1 over the Model 2 dial layouts. The Model 2 is just a bit too chunky personally for me, but that's an aesthetic choice, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to love it. And on my scale of grail to buy, to shortlist, to think about it, to better options out there, I think this is a decent think about it option. Another decent option is subscribing to this channel if you haven't already done so. Stay up to date with the goings on in the watch world by clicking the subscribe button. Thanks a ton. Tariffs. Initially, Trump and company announced a 31% tariff on Swiss goods. Now it's apparently 39%. So what's that going to mean? Well, no Swiss brands are going to open factories in the US. It's not happening, ever. The US watch industry is not suddenly going to boom. This is not a big industry in the grander scheme of things globally. We're not going to see a US competitor to Rolex or Omega. Prices are going to go up on all Swiss watches in the US. No Swiss watchmaker can absorb 39% of costs. They just don't make that kind of profit. Swatch Group made like 3% last year. Anybody thinking their profits can absorb this level of tariffs is just wrong. These costs are going to be paid by the American consumer. The knock-on effects are also fairly simple. In the short term, the gray market watches that are in the US already will get more expensive because if the retail price increases, which it will, then secondary prices will go up because there will be an increase in demand. One thing we've already seen is there's been a slight peak in the number of sales in, I think it was April or May month in the US, and that's simply because a lot of people bought a lot of watches in anticipation that they were going to get expensive later in the year. In the medium to long term, demand for Swiss watches in the US is likely going to decline. For brands like Hamilton, Mido, Rado, Christopher Ward, Tudor even, I think sales are at a risk of falling off a cliff. The more a brand is positioned as affordable, the more likely the sales are going to decline because people buying affordable watches will choose not to buy these now much more expensive things. That and their margins are just thinner. The more expensive the watches are, the less noticeable I think the decline will be. I don't know specifically where the sort of cutoff point is, but think of this. A Rolex Daytona costs, $16,000, $17,000 in the US. The gray market price is currently somewhere around $25,000, $26,000, $27,000, $28,000 according to watch charts. That means there's demand at $28,000. That's 75% above or thereabouts retail price. To me, that indicates that a Daytona at least won't be impacted by a quite significant increase in retail pricing. But a sub has only a 20-23% price differential between retail and gray. There's no guarantee that demand for the sub won't be impacted. Even a Patek that's $100,000 will now be upwards of $115,000 going forward because they apply the tariff to the import price. But anything, 15%, that's from 100 to 115, that's a lot. 115,000 might even scare off some of the stingier billionaires. As for the really high end, I think even there will be an impact. Plus, I think more billionaires are going to do their best to buy their Grübel Forsays in Europe and then sneak them into the country and hope customs doesn't stop them. With China not buying watches and now 39% of tariffs, this means bad times for big parts of the Swiss watch industry. I did a more comprehensive video on this last weekend. For Americans, if you're not loaded, you're likely going to stop buying. If you are loaded, you're going to be paying more in federal taxes to the government so you can get a Rolex or an AP. As for Europe, demand is anemic for watches. I don't see Europeans picking up the slack. Precious metal Rolexes are generally quite available over here, and I don't see Rolex redirecting US stocks to Europe or China. So it's not going to be a real benefit in terms of availability. This comes at an especially challenging time. As of August the 1st, I think, the Swiss government support for watch industry employees on reduced hours has ended. So around 65,000 people work in Switzerland's watch sector, with about 10% directly impacted by these changes. If demand continues to fall, layoffs and even business closures could follow. And then there's George Kern of Breitling. He said in an interview to Hodinkee recently, assume we don't find a solution in the next 3 months, then obviously we will have to increase prices. We will have to discuss with our partners to reduce margins. We will have to consider price increases, not only in the US, but in the rest of the world, because you cannot just increase prices by 39% in the US, which is a market that is booming right now, he says. I called it back in my tariff video. There is an option on the table to increase prices globally to minimize the increases in the US. And as a businessman, I completely understand that logic. You make the world eat a 6% increase instead of hitting your most lucrative market with a 15 or 39% increase that might tank your sales. But, Georgie boy, I could see an issue where some people outside of the US take quite an amount of issue with them having to pay for US tariffs. So you would have to factor that into the equation as well. No more tariffs for this time around. Seiko Alpinist. Seiko released one in blue, and it's a European exclusive. It's 39.5 millimeters in diameter. It's 46.4 millimeters in lug to lug. It's got the 6R35 inside with 70 hours of power reserve. It's got cathedral hands. It's got dual crowns. It's got a fabric and leather strap included, and it's got a blue dial. It's priced at just under $1,000 or 1,000-ish euros, give or take, 900. At the risk of being blasphemous, I've never really gelled with the green and gold Alpinist. Sorry. The white silver one wasn't to my taste either, but the blue though, I think it's the best one ever. I mean, I'm boring, I know, I always talk about boring watches, but give me a black or blue dial and I'm usually content. This is in every way a crowd pleaser. I can't really find any downsides to this watch. I'm sure some people don't like the dual crown, but for me, that's kind of what makes the Alpinist the Alpinist. The 6R35 is a decent workhorse movement, but it is one of those movements that's in, the Seiko accuracy lottery. Sometimes it's hyper accurate and sometimes it lives entirely up to spec, which is something like -25 +15 or something wild like that. Who's it for? It's for Seiko lovers. It's for people that think Hamilton Field watches are a bit dull. It's for somebody that wants an outdoor style of a watch with a bit more finesse to it. Especially in this configuration, I'd argue that it's almost dressy with polished bezel and polished chamfers of the lugs. The blue leather, which I assume is probably faux alligator or something, also pushes this watch more to the dressy side of things. But if you get a canvas or a suede strap, and this is going to be incredibly capable as performing as a more rugged watch. This is a definite buy option for me. The Alpinist has and is and always has been a fabulous design. It's got character, it's got personality, and in blue, it's just gorgeous. A report from Bezel, who are essentially a watch dealer, found that a quarter of inspected watches are fake, with Rolex making up half of the rejections. While some watches simply fall short of quality claims, many are counterfeits. And despite criticism, demand for Rolex persists, and it fuels the fake market. Buyers should be cautious. Verify sellers and make sure purchases are authenticated to avoid scams and fakes and Franken watches and whatever. Glashütte Original released a new Panamatic. Now, the Panamatic is a fan favorite. To many, it's the cheaper but really good sister to the Lange 1. The layouts are very similar with the offset hour, minute, and seconds dial, plus usually a complication, so a reserve or a moon phase, or in the case of this watch, a moon phase and an annual calendar. This watch features an in-house movement based on the Glashütte Caliber 36. It offers you a moon phase, an annual calendar, 100 hours of power reserve, and a gold micro rotor. Its finishing includes both machined and hand-engraved elements like the double swan neck regulator. The decoration honestly rivals the Lange 1, but it's less extensive. Notably, things like the big date window displays both numerals at the same height, unlike the Lange 1, which is slightly offset. It's priced at 30,000 euros for gold, 42,000 euros for platinum. It offers premium materials and superb craftsmanship. This is the prettiest of the Pano models. The Pano Inverse was never my favorite. Skeletons, kind of scare me. The Reserve was always a little bit unbalanced to me, and my favorite until now has been the moon phase, but this one just adds that little bit of extra to the dial that to me makes it feel complete. The Panamatic is a fabulous watch, and this version is exceptional. But there's no way I'm paying for a gold or platinum model. Somebody will, but I will dream of them releasing a steel model. I doubt it's in the cards. It feels to me like the annual calendar version is going to be reserved for the high rollers willing to pay for precious metal. So it's out of my price range, but surely not out of range for everybody. Who's it for? A Grand Lange 1 costs you 45,000, similar to a platinum Glashütte Original. On the secondary market, a regular, so not an annual calendar Lange 1, sells for $25,000, $30,000. These watches look a lot alike. They prompt comparisons as potential alternatives. Lange excels in decoration and prestige, while Glashütte offer more modern design elements, such as stick indices and sleek date windows instead of Roman numerals. The Glashütte buyer is going to be different. They're going to be less beholden, likely though, to brand and desirability, especially the stuff that's attributed to Lange and Söhne. They're probably also a little bit younger. There's not a lot of these kinds of people out there, but they do exist. This is likely not a first watch buyer either. People who buy this also have something else, and I put my money on the fact that they likely have more dress watches than sports watches in their collection. And as for my rating, it's on my clear shortlist with a dream that it gets released in steel. I'm thinking it's a definite shortlist option for buyers. Mido, a brand I don't talk a lot about. Why? Because I actually have to travel outside of Denmark to see them. Mido don't have an official retailer in Denmark, and it's not a brand that has sent me watches for review yet. But, that could change. But whenever I'm on vacation, I tend to seek them out. And this time around, they have a new Ocean Star Worldtimer 1970s re-edition, long word, which I saw while passing through Geneva not long ago. It's 1,000 euros. It's 40.5 millimeters in diameter, 13 millimeters of thickness. It's got a Powermatic 80 movement, 80 hours of power reserve. 2 straps are included. It's got a bund strap and a black leather strap with red stitching. It's got a white dial with alternating black and white tracks and a Worldtimer bezel. There's no actual Worldtimer movement inside. The bezel just has different cities listed, and you turn the bezel to adjust for wherever you are in the world. This watch is a standout example of authentic retro design. It's got off-white dial, red accents, blocky hands, and a unique bezel with alternating deep knurling and smooth edges. It's got thoughtful touches like a triangular crown guards. It's got softly finished case, which evokes, the spirit of the 1970s. I appreciate how it remains faithful to a true vintage style, and it avoids, those modern reinterpretations that you see so many of. And it also doesn't have one of those unnecessary globe motifs in the center of the dial. Dislikes? Bun straps are fun, but unless you work in a tattoo parlor down by the dock servicing sailors on shore leave, I just don't see a lot of people pulling them off. Maybe Clancy Brown could pull it off, but that would only be in Starship Troopers, and that would also exude a very specific vibe that most, if not all, people should probably try to avoid. And I mean, for the price, you can't really expect it to be a Worldtimer complication, but it might have been cool, and I probably would have been willing to pay a little bit extra for it. Again, one of the things Swatch doesn't do, which could have been amazing, just try and push the envelope and see how much can you get people to pay for a Mido if it's really, really specced out. Who's it for? You wear Barber International. You might own a Land Rover Defender. You might also be young. You might be trendy and into streetwear, and you have an actual fit. I mean, what do I know? I wear overshirts and leather brogues. This kind of watch is also for me. I think this watch is a watch that fits into a very specific clothing style and a specific personality. Rolex Submariners you'll find on anybody, on people with suits, on people in jeans, but this one just feels much more specific, much more focused. And in some ways, it has the ability to work as a fashion watch, and in a good way. The point is, the buyer wants something non-standard, something special. And for me, this is a buy. Powermatic 18 movement and all. Finally, Panerai. I like Panerai. I like the submersible case. And this new release, the 44mm Marina Militare, is super cool. I absolutely love the green hue bezel. I adore the deep fume green textured dial. This is a fabulous design, and there are days where I just don't understand why people don't really buy Panerai anymore. I mean, for someone considering something with the aesthetics of a Doxa 300 or a Ploprof or even an Oris Aquis, the Panerai submersible should be in contention. It's capable, it's good looking, it's distinctive, it's manly. This is a manly watch for manly men who do manly things in a manly way. I mean, the sub-seconds dial is even shaped like the sights of a rifle, so you can pretend you're ready to shoot someone at a moment's notice. And worst case, if you don't have a rifle, throw the Panerai at the charging buffalo and you're likely to knock the thing out, at least temporarily. But 44mm and $12,100. 44mm is just a brick of a watch. The height isn't much better. The 42mm submersibles are a fabulous form factor, and I don't understand why Panerais insist on still prioritizing 44mm watches. And I mean, I suppose it's better than 49mm, but it's still too much from a positioning perspective. But Mike, your wrists are terrific. Are you saying even you can't wear a 44mm Panerai? Well, no, I can wear a 44mm Panerai, but I prefer a 42. And $12,100, $2,500 or so more than a Submariner. Nearly double that of a Seamaster 300M. It's 40% more than a Planet Ocean. I can't for the life of me find a way to justify that pricing. It's not the movement. It's a variant of the one you find in the IWC Pilot Mark 20. It doesn't have more than 300 meters depth rating. It's not titanium. It doesn't have any party tricks like a helium escape valve or an ejector seat. $12,100 is just bonkers. If Panerai were hoping to reverse their fortunes with this watch, it's not going to do it. So as for rating, at $6,000, $7,000 in 42mm, I would buy this watch in a heartbeat. At 44mm and $12,100, there are definitely better options out there. Panerai, whatever drugs you are taking, you need to stop. And that's all we had for this time. Share your thoughts and comments below. Like, subscribe. Cheers.